Hey guys, my name is Michael Jaquez and my presentation is on the smallpox vaccine. Now before we talk about the smallpox vaccine, let's talk a little bit about the smallpox disease itself. So the smallpox disease is caused by the variola virus, which is a part of the poxviridae family. Now the poxviridae family will include all the major poxvirus diseases such as goat pox, sheep pox, squirrel pox, and cowpox. There are two major strains of the smallpox virus, the variola major and the variola minor. Now, the variola major is the one that is more commonly known to us and that causes the much more harmful and much more severe effects on humans, while the variola minor only causes much less harmful and much more minor effects on the human. Now, in terms of size, the smallpox virus is about 300 nanometers in length, which is actually quite large for a virus. If you think about the rhinovirus, which is the virus that causes the common cold, it is only about 30 nanometers in length. And here at the bottom, I included an image of the smallpox virus, and its structure is actually very important to the function that it carries out to help it spread and infect the rest of the body. So as we get into the symptoms and diagnosis of the smallpox virus, the virus will usually infect the body for about 4 to 6 weeks, beginning with the incubation period in which people really won't show any signs of symptoms, and they're not contagious at this point. And then a few days after this, you'll begin to develop early and much less serious symptoms. These may include headache, body ache, high fever, or vomiting. And then as the smallpox virus continues to infect the body, you move into later stages of infection, which include red spots that will develop on the mouth and the tongue. And these red spots will eventually develop into sores that will become very inflamed and even filled up with an opaque-like fluid. And in addition to this, rashes will begin to spread throughout the body. And in the final stage of infection, these inflamed sores that have spread throughout the body will begin to scab, and then these scabs will finally begin to fall off. So now for a little historical background on the smallpox virus. So it's pretty much unknown when the smallpox virus began, but it's estimated that it was about 10,000 years ago in history. And the first definitive evidence that we have is in the 3rd century BC in the Egyptian Empire. And there's even evidence in written records throughout the Roman Empire, in India, in the Far East, in China and Japan, and even throughout Europe in the Middle Ages. An incredibly relevant virus during some of the wars, such as the Peloponnesian War, the Holy Crusades, the European colonization that spread the smallpox virus to the Americas and to the indigenous people out there. And it was also incredibly relevant during both world wars. And we'll see a major spike of the smallpox virus during World War II in the 1940s. And even in the New World, when the smallpox virus was brought to the Americas, about 30 to 40 million people died. But then we see the treatment of the smallpox virus through first variolation in the 1400s by the Chinese, in which they infected or they took already infected people of the smallpox virus to infect other people with the smallpox virus in an attempt to prevent infection. And then we have the development of the vaccine in 1796 by Edward Jenner. And then once we get to the 1950s, it will be completely eradicated in North America and Europe. And then the last known person to ever have smallpox was Janet Parker, and she died in 1978. And just for some quick statistics on the smallpox virus, throughout history it has killed billions of humans. We see that in the Americas when the smallpox virus was brought over from the Europeans. The Incas and the Aztecs both decreased in population by about 90% in the 1650s. And throughout the 20th century, it is estimated that there were about 300 million people that died of the smallpox virus. Another statistic tells us that about 3 out of every 10 people who contracted the smallpox virus ended up dying. And in both the 19th and 20th century, about 5 million people died every year of smallpox. So now a little bit more about the smallpox vaccine itself. The smallpox vaccine will actually be the first vaccine ever developed in history by Edward Jenner in 1796. A few common trade names include ACAM 2000, Imvanex, Jynneos, among many others, and these will all actually refer to different types of the smallpox vaccine. And the vaccine type that is categorized for smallpox is a live virus, and the first type of smallpox vaccine that was actually developed was consisted of cowpox, which is actually where we get the name vaccine from. Vaccinus, the Latin word meaning of or from a cow. And then finally, the most modern form of the smallpox vaccine would be developed in the 19th century. So the 4 types of smallpox vaccine would include the calf lymph, Dryvax, ACAM 2000, and Imvanex. So the first type of smallpox vaccine that was developed was from the calf lymph, where they would take a virus that was cultured in the skin of calves and freeze dry it to use on people infected with smallpox. And this was the most common vaccine that was used in the 1800s, and it was actually used in the United States in place of the arm-to-arm vaccination, because they advised against the arm-to-arm vaccination because this would actually cause spread of other diseases such as syphilis. So in terms of the second type of smallpox vaccine, we have Dryvax, which would be developed in the late 1800s by Wyeth, and it is going to be the oldest smallpox vaccine that has been developed, and it is also developed from calf lymph, and it is a freeze-dried live virus. But alternate types of vaccines were developed because of the serious adverse side effects that we would see in about 1% to 2% of smallpox cases. So then in 2007, ACAMBS developed the ACAM 2000, which consisted of a live virus, but instead of using the calf lymph, they actually used kidney epithelial cells from the African green monkey. And the route that is administered, or the route that is used to administer this vaccine, is percutaneous, consisting of 15 jabs of a bifurcated needle through the skin. And then the last type of smallpox vaccine that we have is Imvanex, which is also a live attenuated non-replicating virus, which will have much less adverse effects than the ACAM 2000 and the Dryvax, and the injection used here is via a subcutaneous route. So even though that the smallpox virus has easily been the most deadly, the most harmful outbreak that history has ever seen, it has really evolutionized and has really changed the world of immunology and disease prevention as we know it. And the smallpox virus is still kept in labs today, both by the CDC in Atlanta, Georgia, and by Russia in their Vector Institute. Both of these countries agreeing to keep the virus in a lab so they can continue to research for better antiviral drugs, better and safer vaccines, and even a means of research to help diagnose the smallpox virus quicker in patients if it were to ever break out again in the world. But obviously, keeping this virus is highly debated, highly controversial. Whether or not we should keep this dangerous virus around and still in existence. And even 3 years ago, there's actually a gas explosion in the Vector Institute in Russia. Luckily, it was quite a ways away from where the smallpox virus was kept in that institute. But this kind of even throws more fire into the flame, into the debate whether or not we should keep this virus still in existence. And then finally, here are just a few of the sources that I used for this presentation, and thank you guys for watching.